Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'm a maintenance supervisor at a local apartment complex, which means I'm gone most of the day dealing with tenant complaints and repair requests. It's honest work, but it can be exhausting. I live in a neighborhood where most people keep to themselves, which is exactly how I like it after dealing with people all day at work. About 6 months ago, I started having issues with my next door neighbor. It all began when she moved in and decided that the property line between our houses was somehow negotiable. She kept parking her car partially on my driveway, letting her dog use my yard as a bathroom, and even had the nerve to use my outdoor water spigot without asking. When I politely asked her to stop, she completely lost it and started screaming about how I was being unreasonable and that neighbors should help each other. Things escalated quickly from there. She began filing false noise complaints against me with the Homeowners Association, claiming I was having loud parties when I was actually just watching TV at normal volume. She started leaving nasty notes on my car and even threw trash from her yard onto mine. The final straw came when I caught her trying to break into my storage shed, claiming she thought it was abandoned property she could use. After documenting everything and getting security cameras installed, I had no choice but to file for a restraining order. The court granted it after reviewing all the evidence, including video footage of her various antics. The restraining order specifically states she has to stay at least 50 feet away from me and my property. Since then, she's tried to get around it by having her sister and her sister's kids come onto my property to harass me, but I've documented all of that too. So today, I got home from work around 4 in the afternoon, tired and just wanting to relax. My phone buzzed with a delivery notification saying my Amazon package would arrive within the next hour. I'd ordered some replacement parts for my lawnmower, nothing fancy, but something I needed for the weekend. I decided to wait outside since the weather was nice and I wanted to make sure I didn't miss the delivery. Right on schedule, the Amazon truck pulled up to my house. The driver was someone I'd seen before, a friendly guy who always made sure packages got to the right address. I walked over to meet him when he grabbed my package from the back of the truck. The driver greeted me cheerfully and told me he had my delivery ready. He asked me to sign on his electronic scanner to confirm the delivery. I was reaching for the signature pad when I heard heavy footsteps behind me. Karen came walking across her yard toward us, her face already red with whatever rage she'd worked herself into this time. She was wearing an old stained t-shirt and pajama pants, her hair looking like she'd just rolled out of bed, even though it was the middle of the afternoon. She walked over and demanded that the package was hers. She told the driver she'd been waiting for it all day and insisted he give it to her immediately. The driver looked confused and checked his scanner again. He politely explained that the package was addressed to me and that he couldn't give it to anyone else. Karen didn't care what his scanner said. She got more aggressive and told him that the package was hers and he needed to hand it over right now. I stepped back, making sure to keep the required distance between us while staying close enough to the driver to complete my delivery. I told her that the package wasn't hers and that the driver had already confirmed it was addressed to me. She accused me of somehow stealing her delivery information and claimed I was always trying to make her life difficult. The driver tried to reason with her, explaining that he couldn't give someone else's package away and that if she was missing a delivery, she needed to contact Amazon directly. She announced that if he wouldn't give her the package, she would just take it herself. She started moving toward the driver aggressively, and I had to speak up. I warned her to stop and reminded her that if she took one more step toward me, she would be violating the restraining order. I told her she needed to stay at least 50 feet away, but she didn't stop. She kept coming, her face getting redder by the second. Then she started screaming about how she didn't care about the restraining order. She yelled that because of me, she was separated from her husband and heading for divorce. I told her that if she hadn't spent the last 6 months acting like a complete lunatic toward me and everyone else in the neighborhood, maybe her husband wouldn't have gotten tired of her entitled behavior. She started screaming at the top of her lungs. Using language that would make a sailor blush, the poor delivery driver just stood there holding my package, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. She continued ranting about how this was all my fault and that her marriage was fine until I moved in and started causing problems. I pointed out that I'd lived here for 3 years and that she was the one who moved in and immediately started trespassing and stealing. The driver tried to defuse the situation by asking her to step back and explaining that he was just trying to do his job. Karen continued her rant for another minute before finally walking back to her house, slamming her front door so hard I'm surprised the glass didn't break. The driver finished the delivery, shaking his head when he handed me the package. He commented that he'd seen some crazy stuff on his route, but that was something else. He asked if she was always like that. I apologized that he had to deal with that situation and confirmed that she was pretty much always that way. He brushed off my apology and said it wasn't my fault. Then he asked if he could get my contact information in case anyone asked about what happened, since he'd never had someone try to steal a package right in front of him like that. I gave him my contact information and made sure to get his name and the delivery confirmation number. After he left, I went inside and immediately called the police to report the restraining order violation. I had a witness this time, plus the delivery confirmation would show the exact time and location. The officer who took my call said they'd send someone over to document the incident and speak with a neighbor. About 20 minutes later, I heard a police car pull up outside. I watched from my window when 2 officers walked up to her front door. Then I heard it. A scream so loud it probably woke up everyone within 3 blocks. She was yelling that she didn't break any restraining order, using plenty of colorful language. The officers spent about 15 minutes talking to her while she continued yelling about how unfair everything was and how I was ruining her life. Eventually, they came over to get my statement and the delivery driver's contact information. One of the officers mentioned that violating a restraining order could result in immediate arrest and additional charges. They gave her a warning this time, but told her that any future violations would result in her spending time in jail. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that maybe this will finally be the wake-up call she needs, but somehow I doubt it. After years of failed relationships and honestly wondering if I'd ever find the right person, I met my fiancée 3 years ago at a coffee shop. She was struggling with her laptop, and being the tech guy I am, I offered to help. We hit it off immediately. She's 28, works as a nurse, and honestly, she's the most caring person I've ever met. After 2 years of dating, I proposed, and we're getting married at the end of this month. One thing that developed naturally in our relationship was this little habit of mine. Every morning when we wake up, I give her a forehead kiss. It started randomly one morning about 2 years ago when she looked so peaceful waking up, and I just leaned over and kissed her forehead. She smiled and told me it was the sweetest way to start the day. Now it's become our thing. When she naps and wakes up, I do the same. It's just this automatic, loving gesture that means a lot to both of us. My dad remarried 5 years ago to a woman who brought her son into our family. My stepbrother is 25 and has always been a bit competitive with me. When I got my first promotion, he made comments about how some people get lucky. When I bought my car, he told me I was showing off, but I've always tried to keep the peace for my dad's sake. Yesterday, my dad invited my fiancée and me over for dinner and a movie night. My stepbrother brought his girlfriend too. They've been together for about 8 months now. She seems nice enough, but I've noticed she gets quiet whenever my fiancé and I interact normally. We were all settled in the living room watching some action movie my dad picked. My fiancé had been working extra shifts at the hospital all week, so she was exhausted. About halfway through the movie, she curled up next to me on the couch and fell asleep. The movie ended, and we started another one. My fiancé woke up about an hour later, looking a bit disoriented the way people do when they wake up somewhere that's not their bed. I asked her if she felt better and called her sleepyhead in a gentle way. Without even thinking about it, I leaned over and gave her that usual forehead kiss. She smiled and snuggled closer, telling me she felt much better and asking if she missed anything good. My dad joked that she only missed a lot of explosions and terrible one-liners. We all laughed, and I thought everything was normal. My stepbrother's girlfriend was scrolling on her phone and my stepbrother was staring at the TV with this weird expression. About 20 minutes later, my stepbrother stood up. He told me he needed to talk to me right now. He walked toward the kitchen, clearly expecting me to follow. I looked at my fiancé, confused, but got up and followed him. He immediately asked me what the hell was wrong with me. I had no idea what he was talking about. He then accused me of forcing my perfect relationship down everyone's throat and said it was disgusting. I told him I wasn't forcing anything and that I had just kissed my fiancé. I reminded him we were literally getting married in 3 weeks. He called me obsessed with her and said it was weird and uncomfortable. He demanded I stop acting like some romance movie character when other people are around. I explained that it was just a forehead kiss and that I do that every time she wakes up. I told him it wasn't a big deal. He went on a rant about how everything with us is a big deal. He complained that we're constantly touching, kissing, and acting like we're the only couple in the world. He said some people don't need to see our fairy tale romance shoved in their faces every 5 minutes. We're not overly affectionate in public. We hold hands sometimes. I put my arm around her during movies, and yes, I give her forehead kisses. None of that seemed excessive. I told him I was sorry he felt that way, but I wasn't going to stop showing affection to my fiancé just because it made him uncomfortable. He called me a jerk and said, I always have to be perfect. He accused me of having a perfect job, perfect girlfriend, and perfect relationship. He said some people are struggling, and I parade around like everything's so easy. Before I could respond, he walked upstairs. I stood there for a moment trying to process what just happened. When I returned to the living room, everyone looked at me expectantly. My dad asked if everything was okay. I just said it was some misunderstanding. My fiancé gave me a questioning look, but I shook my head slightly. I didn't want to make things weird for everyone else. About 30 minutes later, my stepbrother's girlfriend went upstairs, probably to find him. The rest of the evening was tense but manageable. My stepbrother never came back downstairs, and his girlfriend returned alone, telling us he wasn't feeling well. We left around 10:30. This morning I woke up to a text from my stepmom that made my blood boil. She told me I needed to apologize to my stepbrother for last night because he was very upset about how uncomfortable I made him. She told me I should stop acting so obsessed with my fiancé when other people are around because it's inappropriate. I showed the text to my fiancé, and she was as confused as I was. She asked what exactly we did wrong. I told her that, apparently, me kissing her forehead is obsessive behavior that makes people uncomfortable. She said that was ridiculous since it's not like we were making out in front of everyone. I decided to call my dad directly instead of dealing with my stepmom's dramatics. I told him I got a weird text from his wife about last night. He said she had mentioned something about it and asked what happened between me and my stepbrother. I explained the whole situation, including the accusation that I was forcing my perfect relationship down everyone's throat. My dad said that was ridiculous and that my fiancé and I are one of the most respectful couples he knows. He pointed out that we barely even hold hands in public. I agreed and said that apparently a forehead kiss is too much. He said he would talk to them because this was getting out of hand. Later that afternoon, my dad called back. He told me he had talked to my stepmom and stepbrother. Apparently, his girlfriend has been complaining that my fiancé and I make her feel bad about her own relationship. She thinks we're showing off. I asked if we were showing off by kissing my fiancé's forehead. My dad said he knew how it sounded. My stepbrother had admitted that his girlfriend has been pressuring him to be more romantic, and seeing us together makes her point out everything he doesn't do. I asked if their relationship problems were somehow my fault. My dad said of course not. He told them both that I had done nothing wrong, and demanding an apology was ridiculous. He said my stepmom wasn't happy about it, but he made it clear that I wasn't changing how I treat my fiancé to make other people comfortable. The next day, my stepmom tried a different approach. She called my fiancé directly. She told her that she thought I should tone down the public displays of affection because it was making family gatherings uncomfortable. My fiancé politely told her that a forehead kiss isn't exactly a public display of affection. She reminded her that we're getting married and this is normal couple behavior. My stepmom said that not everyone is as fortunate in love as we are. She suggested we show some consideration for those who are struggling. My fiance said she was sorry they were struggling, but asking us to hide our relationship wasn't the solution. My stepmom then called my fiance, just as obsessed as I am before hanging up. My fiance immediately called me at work. She told me that my stepmom had just called her obsessed for defending our relationship. I was furious. I told her I was done with this nonsense and that I had a plan. That evening, I called a family meeting. I told my dad, stepmom, and stepbrother that we needed to clear the air. My fiance and I arrived at my dad's house, and everyone gathered in the living room. I stood up and addressed the room. I told them I had heard enough complaints about my relationship and it was time to set some boundaries. I explained that my fiance and I are getting married, and showing normal affection is not obsessive behavior. I told my stepbrother that his relationship problems with his girlfriend are not my responsibility to fix. If she's unhappy with their relationship, they need to work on it together instead of blaming other couples for being happy. I looked directly at my stepmom and told her that calling my fiancé obsessed was completely out of line. I said if she had a problem with how we act as a couple, she could choose not to invite us to family events. My stepbrother tried to interrupt and said I was being dramatic. I cut him off and told him I wasn't finished. I explained that we had tried to be respectful and understanding, but enough was enough. I said a forehead kiss is not inappropriate, and asking us to hide our affection to make other people comfortable is ridiculous. My stepmom started to argue that they were just trying to keep the peace. I told her that keeping the peace doesn't mean making unreasonable demands on people who have done nothing wrong. My dad finally spoke up and supported what I was telling them. He told my stepmom and stepbrother that their behavior was unacceptable and that they owed both my fiance and me an apology. My stepbrother's girlfriend, who had been quiet the whole time, suddenly burst out that it wasn't fair that some people get perfect relationships while others have to struggle. My fiance told her that no relationship is perfect and that we work hard to communicate and show love to each other. She said if she wanted more romance in her relationship, she should talk to her boyfriend about it instead of trying to tear down other couples. The room went silent for a moment. My stepmom looked embarrassed, and my stepbrother was staring at the floor. Finally, my dad told everyone that this discussion was over. He said anyone who felt they couldn't accept that my fiancé and I are happy together and show normal couple affection could skip future family gatherings. My stepbrother mumbled something that might have been an apology. His girlfriend looked like she wanted to disappear into the couch. My stepmom said she didn't realize how her comments had come across and that she was sorry. When we got home, I felt relieved that we had finally addressed the issue. 3 weeks later, at our wedding, my stepbrother and his girlfriend attended but kept their distance. My stepmom was polite but quiet, good enough for me. I have a degenerative joint condition that causes severe pain in my hips and knees. Some days are better than others, but walking long distances is always a struggle. I'm 28 and look completely normal on the outside. That's a problem with invisible disabilities. People see me walking around and assume I'm perfectly fine. I got my disabled parking permit 2 years ago after months of paperwork and doctor visits. Last Wednesday, I had to run to the mall to pick up a prescription from the pharmacy and grab a few things from the electronics store. It was one of my bad days. My joints were screaming and I could barely make it from my apartment to my car without wincing. I was grateful to find an open handicapped spot right near the main entrance. I parked, grabbed my cane from the passenger seat, and slowly made my way into the mall. The whole trip took about 40 minutes. I was exhausted by the time I got back to my car, looking forward to going home and putting my feet up. That's when I saw her, a woman in her 50s with short blonde hair. She was standing next to my car, arms crossed, tapping her foot. She asked if I was the owner of the vehicle. When I told her yes and asked if there was a problem, she exploded. She said there was a problem because I was parked in a handicapped spot and was clearly not disabled. I looked down at the cane in my hand, then back at her with confusion. I told her I had a valid parking permit and was legally allowed to park there. She wasn't having it. She said I had walked into the mall just fine and that she had watched me. She claimed that real disabled people use wheelchairs or walkers, not some fake cane I probably picked up at a garage sale. I explained that not all disabilities are visible and that I have a joint condition that makes walking difficult and painful. I said I had every right to use that spot. She asked to see my permit, betting it was fake or stolen. I unlocked my car and pointed to the handicapped placard hanging from my rearview mirror. She said that could be anyone's permit and accused me of stealing it from some poor old person. She threatened to call the police. I told her to feel free to call whoever she wanted, but that I was leaving now. I got in my car and started the engine. I just wanted to go home and rest. But when I began to back out of the spot, she did something completely insane. She stepped directly behind my car. She said I wasn't going anywhere until the police got there to sort things out. I asked her to please move away from my vehicle because she was going to get hurt. She refused to move and said I couldn't just drive away from my crimes. I put the car in park and got out again. I told her this was ridiculous and that she needed to move right now. I said I was legally parked and that she was preventing me from leaving. She said good, and that maybe next time I'd think twice before stealing parking spots from people who actually need them. Other shoppers were starting to stare. I felt my face burning with embarrassment. I got back in my car and tried to reason with her through the window. I asked her to just move, reminding her that I had shown her my permit and wasn't doing anything wrong. She said my fake permit didn't fool her and that she knew a scammer when she saw one. She was getting more agitated, waving her arms around and pacing back and forth behind my car. I was trapped. I couldn't back out with her there, and she clearly wasn't going to move. After about 10 minutes of this standoff, I decided I had no choice but to call mall security. Before I could dial, she suddenly moved to the front of my car and planted herself right in front of my hood. She dared me to try to run her over, saying that then everyone would see what kind of person I really was. I told her she needed to get away from my car right now because this was dangerous and illegal. She said she wasn't moving until I admitted I was faking my disability and apologized for stealing the spot. I was getting desperate. My joints were throbbing, I was exhausted, and this woman was completely unhinged. I put the car in drive and crept forward very slowly, hoping she'd move out of the way. I said I was going to move forward and asked her to please step aside. She said I wouldn't dare and called me a coward and a thief. She stood her ground, but when I continued creeping forward at about 1 mile per hour, she started backing up while still facing me and shouting. She yelled that I couldn't intimidate her and that she wasn't afraid of me. That's when it happened. While walking backwards and still yelling at me, she tripped over a concrete parking bumper behind her. She fell backwards, and her leg landed right in front of my tire. I hit the brakes right away, but my car had been moving so slowly that by the time I reacted I had already rolled over her shin. She started screaming. She yelled that I had run her over and tried to kill her. She asked someone to call the police and accused me of being a maniac who had just tried to murder her. I threw the car in park and jumped out. I asked if she was okay and apologized, explaining that I was barely moving and that she had fallen down. She said I had done it on purpose and that I was going to jail for attempted murder. I called 911 right away, while she continued screaming and threatening me. Within minutes, an ambulance and 2 police cruisers arrived. The paramedics started treating her leg while she continued her tirade. She told the officers that I had run her over on purpose and was trying to leave the scene of a crime. She claimed I was parked illegally in a handicapped spot with a fake permit. The first officer looked at me skeptically and asked if I had a valid handicapped parking permit. I showed him my placard and my ID, confirming it was legitimate. I explained that this woman had been preventing me from leaving, first standing behind my car, then moving to the front and refusing to get out of the way. She said I was lying and that she was just trying to stop a criminal. She claimed I ran her over because she had caught me red-handed. The officer was taking notes when mall security approached us. The security guard offered to pull up the camera footage of the whole incident. The first officer agreed to review the footage right away. 20 minutes later, we were all crowded around the security monitor watching the surveillance footage. It clearly showed me parking legally in the handicapped spot with my permit visible. It showed her confronting me, standing behind my car then moving to the front. You could see me creeping forward at an incredibly slow pace while she backed up, still gesturing and shouting. Then she tripped and fell, and my tire rolled over her leg before I could stop completely. The second officer told her that the video clearly showed her blocking my vehicle on purpose and refusing to move when I tried to leave. He pointed out that I was driving at an extremely slow speed and that she had fallen on her own. She claimed the video was fake and that I had paid them to edit it. She called it a conspiracy. The officer looked at her like she had lost her mind. He told me that my parking permit checked out as valid and that the video showed this was an accident caused by her actions. He said I was free to go. The paramedics loaded her into the ambulance and she continued screaming threats at me as they drove away. I never heard from her again and no charges were ever filed. My parents made it clear that once I graduated high school, I needed to start contributing to the household or find my own place. College wasn't in the cards financially, so when I saw the posting for a customer service representative position, I jumped on it. The job was at one of those big telecommunications companies, helping people with basic technical issues, mostly password resets, account questions, that sort of thing. Nothing too complicated. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was steady work, and they hired me on the spot after a quick interview. Training was actually pretty enjoyable. They had us practice calls with each other, learn the computer systems, and get comfortable with the most common issues customers called about. Our trainer told us to sound natural and conversational with customers. She said people could tell when you were reading from a script, and it made them feel like they weren't talking to a real person. When customers called saying they couldn't get into their email accounts, I would respond naturally, telling them that sounded frustrating and asking what happened when they tried to log in. That kind of approach worked great. Customers seemed to appreciate that I talked to them like a normal person instead of some corporate robot. My feedback scores were consistently high, and I actually started to enjoy the work. Then everything changed when we got a new supervisor after about 3 months. Let's call her Karen, because that's exactly the type of person she was. Karen had been with the company for 15 years and apparently decided that our entire team was doing everything wrong. Karen called a team meeting on her second day. She told us she had been reviewing call recordings and was seeing way too much deviation from the approved scripts. She said this needed to stop immediately. When I mentioned that our trainer had told us to sound conversational and natural with customers, Karen dismissed that completely. She said she didn't care what our trainer had said because we had scripts for a reason. They were carefully crafted to avoid legal issues and ensure consistent service. She made it crystal clear that if we deviated even slightly from these scripts, we would be written up. The whole team looked at each other. These scripts were incredibly rigid and unnatural. They had us saying things like, "I hope you're having a wonderful day," and I completely understand how frustrating this unique situation must feel for literally every single call, regardless of what the customer actually said. But Karen was our supervisor, so we all nodded and said we understood. The very next day, I got a call that would change everything. A guy called in with a pretty standard issue. He greeted me casually and said his account was locked, asking if I could help him real quick. Now, normally, I would have said something like, "Sure thing, let me look into that for you." But Karen had made it crystal clear that we needed to follow the script exactly. So I took a deep breath and switched into full robot mode. I gave him the full, formal greeting, introducing myself by name and hoping he was having a wonderful day, before asking how I could assist him with his technical concern. There was this long pause on the other end of the line. He asked if I was serious, clearly confused and slightly annoyed. I could hear the confusion in his voice, but Karen had been very specific about not deviating from the script. I apologized for any inconvenience he might be experiencing and told him I completely understood how frustrating this unique situation must feel. I explained that I needed to verify some information first to better assist him. He asked what was happening and why I was talking like I was reading from a manual. He said he just needed me to unlock his account. I thanked him for his patience and explained that security was our top priority, which was why I needed to ask questions to verify his identity before proceeding. The poor guy sounded completely baffled, but I kept going word for word through the entire verification process. Even when he tried to interrupt or ask simple questions, I responded with the exact scripted responses Karen had insisted we use. When he asked if I could just tell him if there were any failed login attempts on his account, I told him I wanted to ensure I provided the most accurate information possible and asked him to allow me a moment to review his account details. Right in the middle of this painful conversation, I noticed Karen walking around the call floor. She was doing her usual rounds, listening to different representatives. Then she stopped right behind my desk. I could feel her standing there, and I knew she was listening to my call. I continued with the script, hitting every single line exactly as written. When the customer expressed frustration, I delivered the scripted empathy responses. When he asked straightforward questions, I gave the scripted acknowledgement phrases before providing answers. I told him I completely understood his concern and wanted to assure him that resolving his technical issue was my top priority. Based on my review of his account, I explained that there had been multiple failed login attempts, which triggered our security protocols and resulted in his account being temporarily locked for his protection. The customer actually started laughing. He said he couldn't believe I really couldn't talk like a normal person and that this was wild. I finished the call, unlocked his account, and went through the entire scripted closing sequence, including asking about his overall satisfaction with the service and whether there was anything else I could help him with. Karen was standing right next to my desk with this confused expression on her face. She asked why I had been talking like that. I looked up at her with the most innocent expression I could manage and reminded her that she had told me to stick to the script. She just stared at me for a moment, clearly trying to figure out what to say. I had followed her instructions to the letter. There was literally nothing she could criticize about my call. I had used every single scripted phrase, hit every required talking point, and completed the call successfully. Karen said I didn't have to be quite so robotic about it. I reminded her that she had said if we deviated even slightly, we'd be written up, so I was just making sure I followed the script exactly as written. She didn't have a comeback for that. She just mumbled something about getting back to work and walked away. The next morning, Karen called another team meeting. She said she had been thinking about our conversation regarding the scripts. She told us to just make sure we covered the key points, but that we could be natural again. She said we wanted customers to feel like they were talking to real people. I had to bite my lip to keep from smiling. The rest of the team was trying not to laugh. We all went back to talking like normal human beings, and Karen never mentioned strict script adherence again. I had just turned 18 and was finally old enough to handle my own money without my parents breathing down my neck. I'd been wanting to get into doing lashes for a while now, watching YouTube tutorials and dreaming of having perfect eyelashes. My part-time job at the local coffee shop didn't pay much, but I'd saved up enough to buy a decent lash extension kit. I was scrolling through Facebook Marketplace when I found what looked like the perfect deal. A woman was selling a professional lash kit for $20, which was way cheaper than buying it new from a beauty supply store. Her profile looked legit too. She had a business page for beauty services with her real name, which was pretty unique. The page wasn't super active, but it had been around for years, which made me feel better about the whole thing. I messaged her about the kit, and she seemed nice enough. She told me she had just bought it for a beauty class, but ended up missing the class, so now she was trying to get some money back by selling it. I asked her if the kit was completely brand new because I wanted to make sure everything was unused. She assured me that it was absolutely brand new and that she had never even opened most of the packages. I asked her 3 more times just to be sure, because $20 was still a lot of money for me at the time. Each time she swore up and down that everything was completely new and unused. We arranged to meet at the mall the next day. I was running a bunch of errands for my mom, so my hands were full of shopping bags when I got there. The woman seemed friendly enough when we met, middle-aged, normal-looking, nothing that screamed scammer to me. She handed me the kit in a plastic bag and I handed over my $20. Since my hands were so full and she seemed trustworthy, I didn't check the contents right there. Big mistake. When I got home and finally opened the bag, what I saw shocked me Some of the lash strips were clearly used and dirty. There were tweezers that had dried glue on them. Half the items that were supposed to be in the kit were missing entirely. I was shocked, but more than that, I was insulted. If you're going to scam someone, at least put some effort into it. Clean the dirty tools, make it look somewhat new. This was just lazy and sloppy. At first, I told myself to just let it go. It was only 20 bucks, right? But the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. It wasn't about the money, it was about the principle. She had looked me in the eye and lied to me multiple times. She could have sold this as a used kit for maybe $10 and been honest about it, but instead she chose to be a complete sleazebag. I went back to her business page and started digging. I'm really good at finding information online, maybe too good. It's not something I'm proud of, but when someone wrongs me, I tend to go down rabbit holes. I found her personal profile and saved it before doing anything else. I messaged her business page with photos of all the dirty and missing items. I told her that I had bought the lash kit from her yesterday, and when I got home, I found that many items were clearly used and dirty, and several pieces were missing entirely. I said I was hoping this was just a mistake and we could work this out. Her response made my blood boil. She simply told me that the kit was new without any explanation. That was it. No acknowledgement of the photos I sent, no apology, nothing. Then she blocked me immediately. Now I was really mad. The gloves were off. I spent the next few hours doing what I do best, digging up information. Starting from her personal profile that I'd saved, I found everything. Her husband's profile, her kids' profiles, her relatives' profiles. I even discovered some interesting family drama. It looked like her husband had a kid from his previous marriage who had cut contact with the family. Based on the timeline of when his kids with the scammer were born versus when he got divorced from his first wife, I had a pretty good idea why that kid wanted nothing to do with them. The next day, I started my revenge campaign. I took screenshots of our entire conversation and posted them in the comments of her closest relatives' posts. I asked if the scammer was their family member and explained that she had scammed me out of $20 selling dirty, used beauty products as new. I asked if these were the family values they had raised her with. I wanted her to know I wasn't messing around. Then I messaged her personal profile directly, greeting her and asking if she remembered me, the girl she had scammed yesterday. I laid it all out for her. I told her that when someone who claimed to be a professional cosmetologist, she should know better than to sell dirty tools that go near people's eyes. That kind of thing can cause serious infections. I told her that I had found all 5 of her Facebook profiles, her 3 Instagram accounts, her and her husband's full names and identification numbers, their phone numbers, car information, license plate number, tax identification numbers, their workplaces, and the names of all their close relatives. I gave her 2 choices. She could return my $20, or I could post all of this information on every Facebook business group she used for selling stuff. I also threatened to make sure her husband's ex-wife and his estranged kid knew exactly what kind of people they really were. Within minutes, my phone was ringing. She was calling me, sounding panicked and nervous, still trying to deny that she had scammed me. She begged me to meet her the next day so we could work things out. Her husband started sending me angry voice messages threatening to sue me. He said I better stop harassing his wife or he was calling his lawyer, and that they would sue me for harassment. I told him to go ahead and sue me over $20 because I was sure that would go great for him. I agreed to meet her the next day, same mall, same spot. This time I made sure to get there early and positioned myself where I could see her coming. She showed up 15 minutes late, which already annoyed me. She brought back up too, some angry teenage girl who I figured was probably her niece or something, who kept staring at me like I was the villain here. They also brought this huge, muscular guy who I assumed was supposed to intimidate me. But the funny thing was, the big guy turned out to be the nicest person there. While the scammer and the teenager were being hostile, he was actually friendly and seemed embarrassed by the whole situation. He suggested that we just figure things out and move on. The scammer reluctantly handed me my $20 back, still complaining about how the kit was new and I was being unreasonable. She said she couldn't believe I had gone this far, over $20, and called me crazy. I told her I couldn't believe she thought she could scam people and get away with it. I suggested that maybe next time she shouldn't lie to customers and sell dirty products. I took my money, pulled out my phone, and deleted all the comments I had posted on her relatives' pages right there in front of her. Then I blocked all 5 of her Facebook profiles and walked away. When I was leaving, I heard the big guy talking to her, suggesting that maybe she just shouldn't sell stuff online anymore if she couldn't do it honestly. The teenager was still staring at me, but honestly, I felt great. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.